how to deal with personal failures and imperfections. Let's get right into this. On this side of the board, I have a bunch of qualities associated with handling personal failure in an intelligent way. And it looks pretty simple, but I want you to open your mind to the possibility that this isn't as simple as it seems. I've kind of just wrote these words on the board. You probably think you know what they all mean and it's done. But actually, this is a skill. All of these qualities, all these blue qualities, are actually skills that have to be worked on and developed, kind of like mastering basketball, mastering chess, weightlifting, attention and focus. These are actually all things that have to be worked on actively in order to develop a sense of, proficiency within the skill. So this video is going to be really important for anyone who wants to handle personal failures and setbacks and imperfections in an intelligent way that isn't going to cause them to needlessly suffer in just a very unnecessary way. Now, we'll start with this side. So these are all the qualities that you want to develop when it comes to handling personal failures, and this is the stuff you want to avoid, all this stuff in the red. And the way that we are conditioned has kind of programmed us with a lot of this red stuff. Like, for example, when you get a bad grade in school, there's a general sense of this is a bad thing. I even just called it a bad grade. So you want to pay attention to even the language that we're using to describe certain things. Like I put bad in quotation marks on the board because this is a very, just a key giveaway to the overall emotional tone and worldview of really the situation and how we relate to it. So when we get a bad grade, for example, we just have a sense of self-shame and that we're just doing something like fundamentally wrong and that we're like not enough and that we should just kind of feel guilty. Because if we were smart and we had our stuff together, we would just get a good grade and then it would all be okay forever. But moving back to this blue stuff, these are the qualities that absolutely must be developed in order to handle personal failures of any kind. And I'm going to go through each one by one so that there's no mistaking what I mean. So these are the stuff you want to develop, and these are kind of the things you want to begin to move away from. So I'll start with observation. When you fail, let's say you get a bad grade in school, let's say you make an error in a relationship, let's say you are playing chess, I've been playing a lot of chess recently, and you screw up, you make a bad move, a bad, quotation marks, bad move, you just want to observe it. Like, you don't want to think about it. You don't want to reference a thought about it that says, oh, this is terrible, this is so awful, this is, blah, blah, blah. You just want to look at it in a very neutral way. You just want to be able to observe what's going on. And not only do you want to observe the actual thing that you've done, you want to observe your reaction to the thing. Does your body get tense? Does tension arise in your body? How do you feel? And does it make you feel like impulsive and reactive? So you want to notice the thoughts you're having, because you're going to have thoughts about it. You just want to watch them all. You want to watch them all neutrally. You want to watch your mind, your body, and your emotional reaction to it as well. Basically everything in your experience you kind of want to observe. You want to just be aware of yourself in relation to the personal failure. This is basically step one, is just watching, sort of detaching from thoughts and just witnessing what's happening. Because our thoughts kind of spontaneously arise in our mind and we kind of latch on to them and we just automatically start believing what they're saying without questioning the delusional stream of imagination that's happening within all of our minds. We just kind of attach our sense of self to it, our sense of reality to it, and just run along with it. So right off the bat, we just want to observe our thoughts, our emotions, and we want to feel our emotions well. We don't want to just watch them from this abstract observation that's like far away from what's happening. We want to observe it and actually feel what's happening in our body. We want to get connected right here. We want to get connected to what's actually happening. But moving on to noting. Now, noting is just very clearly and honestly, I have a playlist on honesty, you might want to watch that, stating what is happening. So let's say you fail at, let's say, going to the gym every day. You just want to note, like, oh, I missed the gym. That's it. That's it. You can just state it to yourself in this sort of logical way that is very straightforward and doesn't involve like how you're a failure, or it doesn't have this sense of shame or guilt attached to it. It doesn't have this bad connotation to it. It's just a logical statement based off of your direct observation. Like if if your plan was to go to the gym 4 days a week and you only went twice, just say, oh, I missed the gym twice this week. Oh, okay. And I want you to notice the relationship between all of these qualities. So when you're noting, you can have a sense of compassion for yourself. You can have a sense of presence with your body. You're actually bringing awareness into your body and into your mind. You're feeling, let's say, tension in your gut. You're releasing it. You're feeling your emotions. You're just getting in touch with what's actually happening inside of you. You're curious about it too, like, okay, why? Why did I miss 2 days? And you don't have to say something like, I was lazy. It's like I got distracted. I wasn't as serious as I could be. And I want you to notice my emotional tone. Notice how the way I'm talking it's not like, oh, I was unmotivated and I have to go to the gym more. It's not this like brutal, forceful method. It's more just laid back, almost like I'm just observing what's happening through a microscope. Like I'm just looking at what's happening and then I'm just writing down what's happening. So it's okay. I didn't go to the gym as much as I wanted to. I got distracted with hanging out with my friends, eating junk food, playing video games, whatever, going out too much, whatever the distraction is. Okay, like I got distracted by these. That's okay. It's not a big deal because I can just do it again. I can just work to improve that specific thing. So notice that there's a combination of things going on when I'm talking like that and when I'm relating to a personal failure like that. There's a series of a sense of presence, a sense of curiosity, connection, compassion. It's an entire system of all of these parts working together to create that attitude because I've developed them within myself. Now, having the self-compassion is really important, and this is something that a lot of people actually have a block to. They can't just like hold themselves with a sense of warmth and just create a sense of self-appreciation. Almost like you're holding like a little baby and you're just cradling it in your arms very gently. You realize that this is a very precious thing in your arm and that don't drop it, don't scream at it, don't hurt it. And you basically kind of almost want to treat yourself like that, like you're not imposing anything onto yourself. You're not forcing you're not forcing anything onto yourself. It's this sort of more laid back approach, but it's not this laid back anything goes approach. It's like, okay, there is a result I want, but if I were to just force myself to do it, like this isn't really the change I'm looking for. I want to be able to feel good doing the thing that I want to do. And to just force myself to do it by, shaming myself, by being harsh, by ruminating, by being tense, by doing these things, I'm not going to bring about that desired change that I'm really looking for by just using this just brutal method. And I also want to say that really the approach that I'm talking about is not this like really like overly laid back approach. It's very direct. It's very honest. It's very clear. We're watching what's happening. We're noting it. We're stating it to ourselves honestly where we went wrong. We're not attacking ourselves about it, but we are looking at the truth of the situation. What we want is the truth of this situation. We don't want a set of like moral attachments to it, like it's bad or like I should feel guilty for this. What we want is just the truth of the situation. Oh, this is how doing this makes me feel. I missed out on my goal because this, and this. Okay, so I have a clear image of like what's distracting me, what went wrong, maybe how to improve. This is important. And on top of that, I have a sense of warmth towards myself, like I'm kind of cradling a baby. I'm not this cold person towards myself. My sort of logical mind is integrated with a sense of a warm heart and a loose and open gut. And by loose and open gut, I really mean like my instincts, my emotions, and my thoughts are all really connected to each other. They're all relating to each other in a functional way. So moving on to courage, this relates to seeing the truth of the situation. A lot of personal failures, we might want to blame other people, blame this circumstance. We might not want to take personal responsibility, which is going to be very important for making changes. You have to take responsibility for a lot of your failures, of course, even when something isn't entirely your fault. I personally love to take extra responsibility. I like to just take a radical amount of responsibility because that makes me feel like I can actually change things rather than having this belief that it's kind of all out of my control. I would prefer to have more of a belief that basically it's more dutiful almost. It's more conscientious. It's like I'm not willing to just it's not an anything goes attitude. So my attitude is really laid back, but also very direct. It's warm and compassionate, but also very sharp and cutting through any unnecessary bullshit that might get in the way. So when it comes to being courageous, it's just willing to see the situation clearly. And in order to do that, we actually have to realize how biased we are, how we might want to blame things on other people, how we might want to attack situations, attack other people, and that this is a massive part of how the human mind works. It loves to judge and scapegoat and, throw away responsibility when, it can take responsibility. People really love to just not take responsibility. People like to blame other people. We all do it. But we don't really like realizing how we contribute to problems in the world, which we all do. We're all on the same planet. We're all very connected as a species. So courage has a lot to do with seeing clearly, and not only that, but wanting to see clearly, like really wanting to see clearly what's happening, not like free from our biases, which is not an easy thing. This takes practice. Like I said, these are skills to develop. Moving on, calm. Calm doesn't necessarily mean a particular state, like I feel good. It's more so just non-reactivity towards the situation. And this goes hand in hand with presence. So it's basically remaining present with something and not being very reactive to something, not wanting to force a particular feeling or thing away. So if you have a personal failure, basically admitting to yourself, what it is, and remaining present with it and not battling it, really, not fighting against it. So that's big. You can check out one of my previous videos. It's like how to overcome knee-jerk reactions or knee-jerk reactions and impulsivity. That'll help you with this. Curiosity is massive as well. Curiosity has a lot to do with, just having a sense of awe for what's happening. Like when you fail, like notice how there's a lot of things you can do. You can have a sense of wonder for why you failed and fall in love with how the mechanics of this situation are actually working and really like why it is that you failed. And you can just be curious about it. You can actually seek to want to just have a solid comprehension of why it played out the way it did. Why did I get distracted? Why did I screw up my relationship? Why did I screw up my job? Why did I, whatever. Moving on, connection. Connection is really big. The whole point of basically all of this is to actually feel more connected to life, because everything here basically begins to disassociate you from life and it has you fighting it, whereas everything here brings you into a sense of unity, harmony, and of course connection with life. The whole point is to feel more connected to your whole being, to your emotions, instincts, thoughts, intuition, awareness, to the present moment, to the things that are happening around you, to the people around you, to the things that matter to you, to the things that you want to get done, to what's true as well. To basically all of life. That is, of course, extremely massive. You're basically, if something is making you feel very disconnected from life, that's a very clear sign that this thing is no good. And some examples of that could be like eating a lot of junk food. You feel very numb, you don't feel very clear, you feel kind of disassociated from life, your state is kind of foggy, you're not in touch with your emotions and your body's probably kind of tense, it's not comfortable. So that subjective sense of disconnection from life is suffering, really. And then when we feel most joyful, we feel very connected to life. So in meditative states, people feel very connected to the present moment and they feel great. In relationships, we feel very connected to the people around us and we feel great. When we eat food, we feel great. We're coming into union with something else. So when we feel basically absorbed in something like a task we love, like you love reading, or you're in the flow state when you're playing a sport, or even walking down the street, let's say you're in the flow state, anything that brings you closer to the sense of presence, and basically anything that brings you closer to connection to the present moment makes you feel basically really good. It's fairly simple, actually. Anything that disconnects you from the present moment and starts to make you disassociate from it makes you feel kind of bad. And it's not this sort of external thing like, oh, this is a bad thing because it makes me disassociate from the present moment. It has a lot to do with the internal as well. So a particular situation might make you feel disconnected from, let's say, the present moment because you might have some like past wound that is actually affecting you. So I don't know, let's say like a relationship you're in is making you feel a lot of suffering, a lot of disconnection. Is it the relationship, or is it a lot of, maybe the relationship isn't a good relationship, maybe it's time to end it, but maybe it's also a lot of the, let's say, past wounds that you have that are affecting how you're relating to the person, and maybe you're needy, maybe you're forceful and manipulative, maybe you want them, you want to control them, you want them to be a very specific way so you can get the things you want, and they're doing the same thing, and it's just this disaster of crap. So connection is pretty big. Moving on, we have all the things that you shouldn't do. I'll stand over here. Shaming, being harsh towards yourself, should statements, bad, ruminating, and tension. So I'll start with shaming. Shaming has a lot, these are all very connected as well, just like these. Shaming has the sense that like, you're just kind of attacking yourself almost, but not just like attacking yourself. It's like, oh, like why did I eat that second donut? It's this whole like self-loathing energy. It's an entire way of approaching life, really. It's an entire relationship you have to life, to the things around you, to your emotions, to situations. So shaming is something that we actually do to ourselves quite a lot. One of our first social emotions that we experience, usually the first is embarrassment, which is kind of like a form of shame. It's like we've done something wrong and we have to correct ourselves. And we really have a lot of unconscious shame as a species. A good example of this can even be how in religions there's the sense of like we are, sinners, or we are even in a lot of science and stuff. It's like we're just strictly selfish. So there's a lot. There can be a strong sense of how we're just bad. Like we should be ashamed of who we are. We should be ashamed of this situation. And not only that, but shame connects with basically tension, like body tension, and like this sort of me versus something attitude, like me versus this situation, me versus this failure, me versus like this person, me versus this problem I have. It's this sort of ongoing battle with the world that I'm talking about when it comes to shaming. Like, it's just this ongoing sense of this is not okay, I have to change it, and when I fail at that, there's something wrong with me, I screwed up, something along those lines. And it's the whole, it's this whole approach of wanting to attack reality, whatever aspect of it is, like yourself, another person, a group, a particular belief system, a habit you have, a personal failure. It's this whole attacking and fighting mentality and habit. It's basically just a habit that has snowballed. You're not really very in control of it for the most part. It's just taken on a life of its own. It's like a system in you that's taken on a life of its own. It's this whole habit that seriously screws you up and has you really suffering a lot. I mean, what is suffering other than just struggling and resisting and fighting against something? So our tension, our shame, this is all very connected. So moving on, the harsh attitude that you bring to the situation. And harsh doesn't necessarily mean like this overly critical attitude, but also this overly logical attitude where it's like an inability to have a sense of warmth to you, which I notice a lot of men tend to struggle with more than women. Just my observation. But typically a lot of, I'll just say men, typically a lot of men, they kind of have this like overly rational, it's like this too girly feminine thing to have like self-compassion, which is basically complete bullshit. Really, this whole overly critical, overly logical, completely in the head approach is too disconnected from life. You're too disconnected from your emotions. You're too disconnected from your instincts. You're too disconnected from your intuition. And you're just lost in thoughts for the most part. You're kind of lacking in awareness. You're just lacking in emotional intelligence overall, if that's the approach that you have towards situations. This overly rigid, overly mechanical approach, this overly pragmatic, this overly logical, this overly somewhat angry, like passive-aggressive almost approach. Really, everyone struggles with this. But it's just typically I find that like men tend to struggle with it more. I don't really know why. I kind of have some ideas why, but topic for another video. Next is should statements. So you want to be careful with this kind of stuff. Like, I should have went to the gym 4 days last week, but I only went twice. I shouldn't, should or shouldn't, or both should statements. I shouldn't have had that donut. I shouldn't have done this in my relationship. I should have done that instead. Why didn't I do that? I should have done that. You see how this connects with ruminating as well? And it just has this overall sense of disconnecting you from the present moment. And then you find yourself suffering again. And of course, the word bad. And overall, you want to pay attention to the actual language that you're using to describe situations. Like, this is terrible. Or, I can't believe I did this. This was so bad. This whole approach kind of sucks, to be honest. It's just not an intelligent way to deal with personal failures, problems of any kind. Basically, what I'm advocating for is a more laid-back approach that's well integrated with not only masculinity, but also femininity. And by femininity, I mean soft, loving, nurturing, empathetic. And by masculinity, I mean more direct, clear, visionary, and penetrating. So like we're not caught up in bullshit, but we're also not like, we're not attacking things either. It's like this interesting dynamic between a lot of the masculine and feminine parts of ourselves. So we're not just, cold, overly rational masculine, and we're not overly empathetic and overly sort of compassionate feminine. It's like, depending on the situation, we strike the right balance, depending on the context. So it's like, we would admit to ourselves, like, okay, yeah, I screwed up here, here, and here. But I'm not going to beat myself up about it. I'm going to have a sense of compassion. But also, I can still be kind of firm about it. I can still have a sense of, like, I really have to clean this habit up. I have to clean up these errors. So it's very direct. It's very straightforward, very actually practical, but also laid back, non-forceful. That's the key word. Non-forceful. You're not seeking to just get your hands in there and control everything like a maniac. But it's this more laid back approach. This lack of tension in the body is a very good sign that you're actually doing what I'm saying properly, because when we're tense in the body, there's usually some kind of emotional struggle, attacking, internal conflict that's happening, really. Wherever there's tension in our body, this is a sign that there's clearly a struggle happening inside of us of some kind, whether it's your gut, your jaw, your forehead, whatever it is. Your chest, your shoulders are up. All this stuff is just signs of like emotional dysfunction and overall struggle. And you want to pay attention to that stuff. It goes back to observation, noting, and yeah. So I want you to notice the radical difference between these two approaches and how much you actually do this approach versus how much you do this approach. Like when you screw something up, when you're confused about something, let's say you're talking to a girl and you screw it up. It's like, what's your reaction? Is it like this? It's like, okay, like where did I go wrong, Or is it like this, like how you should be ashamed of yourself and like you're a loser, something like that. And it's not like how you say it to yourself. It's the actual sense and all the emotions that arise. Like the emotions have like a language to them, really. Like the whole way you relate to the situation has it's an interesting dynamic. So you don't have to actually say to yourself like, oh, I'm a loser. But it's the whole sense of like who you are and the whole way you're relating to a situation, all the emotions that arise. That's what has to be paid attention to. And in those moments, we are often the most reactive, the most unconscious, the most delusional, the most biased, which is what makes this really tricky, actually. And that's why we have to really observe ourselves and be very honest. Really, I can put honesty on this. Honesty is really one of the most important things here. But overall, these are very different approaches to handling personal failures and imperfections. And one has just a very, like, you'll just get to the root of a lot of your problems very simply and very fast and with little suffering, very minimal suffering, really, if you do it properly. And the other one is basically, you might get to the root of it, or you might just beat the crap out of yourself and just feel ashamed of yourself for the next, 60 years. And I want you to get that these operate in a very systemic way. So it's like a system that is kind of taking on a life of its own, and it's sort of just playing itself out. So a lot of our unconscious shame is it's almost like it has a life of its own, and in relation to certain situations, it comes out and it starts playing itself out. So kind of like hunger, how when you're hungry, it just kind of has a life of its own. The feeling of hunger arises, and then you go and you get food, and it happens every time. You get hungry, you go get food. You get hungry, you get food. You get hungry, you go get food. And it's like, okay, so this situation triggered me, shame came up, and I did this, and this. Or whatever it is. I want you to get that it's almost like a program that arises and automatically starts running, and you get very sucked into it, like the emotions, the thoughts, the instincts, the whole relationship you have to the situation. It's like an entire structure, it's an entire system that is actually living your life for you. It's very unconscious and mechanical, and you can rewire it to something a lot healthier. But that takes observation, that takes all of this. It takes a serious person to actually do it. Yeah, you have to be very genuine about it. So the video ends here. If you guys have any questions at all, let me know in the comment section below. Other than that, take it easy.